My name is Bob Abelman. In addition to being a professor of communication here at Cleveland State University, I'm also a theater critic for the News Herald, and I'm the moderator for today's panel. So it's good that you guys came. Thank you all for coming here as well. You guys have a crazy busy schedule. What you just saw, I think, is pretty much an accurate reflection of how most artists perceive critics, no matter what the art. And I think oftentimes it's justified. However, if you look at the roots of the words critic, I think you understand what I think the primary function and maybe the greatest contribution of a critic is in the arts. The ancient Greek roots for critic mean to be able to discuss and to judge. So I think the greatest function of critics is to instigate discussion by passing judgment. And I hope that's what we're going to be doing today, and aim our gaze at the independent film industry and independent films in general, and the CIF festival in particular. So welcome all of you.
Thanks.
Let me introduce very quickly the panel, and then I'll go into more detail about each of them. To my immediate right is Clint O'Connor. We have Rosie Wong. We have Michael Rabel. There is Joel Petrikis, Nick Balthazar, and we are missing a panelist, Brandon Harris. The timing is, again, another comedy of errors here. His film is being shown at the film festival as we speak. Right now he's doing Q&A, and he promises that he will be here once he's able to fight through the massive adoring throng that will no doubt be waiting to see him and asking questions afterwards. So I'm guessing he'll be here in about 5 minutes or so. So let me introduce first Clint O'Connor. Clint is the film critic for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. He's been covering the film festival here in Cleveland since 2001. Clint also teaches a course in film criticism in one of those other universities somewhere in Cleveland. Do I have to mention it?
No, that's okay.
John Carroll University. Internet research has revealed that Clint's favorite movie of the year 2012 is A Joyful Noise. And I quote from one of his reviews, Dolly Parton is a national treasure, and that Chris Christopherson just can't make a bad movie. So is any of that true?
No.
No, it's not.
I think I had, yes, unpleasant things to say about that
That's
film.
why I figured that out. So
I did think, which one was that? That's funny.
So how difficult is your job? I mean, you have to obviously review the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And the big studio productions as well as the independent films. So how big is your job?
That's true. It's not difficult. No, it's a lot of fun. It's a joy to go to the movies. The movies are always the best part. Sitting down in a dark theater, that's the best part of the job. No, the only hard parts are the deadlines and keeping up with things and tracking people down for interviews and that sort of thing, and just dealing with the whole process.
You don't just do criticism; you do feature pieces.
Correct.
As well.
Yeah.
So
Interviews with filmmakers, feature stories, news stories, blog items, tweeting items. So a little bit of everything. But it's interesting, and you see a wide variety of. You don't really get to choose what you're going to see necessarily. It's just whatever's coming out that week. And try to see as many of those.
So on average, how many films do you see in a review?
In a week? You know, every week's different. I mean, this week I've seen, 10 or 12 because of the film festival, but some weeks it may only be 3. So
only 3.
It depends. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And we're
Sure.
going to ask more questions about your job in a few minutes. Rosie Wong. Rosie earned a BA and an MFA at UCLA. And while working at a school's theater and film and television program, she produced numerous student shorts, including Student Academy Award winner Barrier Device. Congratulations on that. Rosie is currently an independent producer and has been the senior manager of the Sundance Film Festival Industry Office since 2006. So what does that mean? What does your job entail, if you don't mind?
Herding cats. So basically, a lot of the independent film industry goes through me to get their passes, and a lot of it is just industry relations and sometimes saying no a lot, and kind of managing people's expectations in terms of how big a film festival like Sundance is. And unfortunately, we have the element that has nothing to do with film, that is not associated with us, where people just come to party and whatnot, but we're very focused on our filmmakers and the films. So I take care of all the industry people from the studios and the agencies and production companies and other film festivals to come to the festival to watch films and kind of keep it very focused on that.
So this week you're kind of on the giving end, of the getting end,
taking
of
end,
the
right?
taking end,
Yeah.
the sucking in end of the giving. How does that feel?
It feels great. It's always nice to see another festival and how they run.
Are you abusive to the people that are hurting you? No, you're kind and wonderful. This is your opportunity. Michael Rabel has over 50 film productions under his belt. Must be very uncomfortable. And holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in film from the University of California at Santa Cruz. In 1995, Michael took on the role as CineQuest Film Festival's programming director and has been instrumental in producing and managing an ongoing, adventurous film program, while also assisting producers garner exposure through CineQuest's multi-platform distribution division, which now distributes, is this correct, about 75 titles?
About, yeah.
That's incredible. In addition to his role as programming director, he is developing new feature productions for the recently formed CineQuest Maverick Studio. Is there anything you can tell us about some of the new films that are going
Well, we're
forward
raising money.
to make the films?
That's what I can tell you. We're raising money for the studio still. So, I mean, we've got a little ways to go still. I mean,
Is that a big part of your job? Is it?
Right now, until we get the money, it's, you know, I'm not too much come on the development side of it,
Okay.
and I'm not the fundraiser part of it.
Oh goodness, yeah.
So I'm waiting until that happens.
So
And
once
then
the
I'll
money
shift.
is there, that's when your job really kicks in.
Yeah, and then I go off on different production shoots and all that stuff.
And you follow the production from beginning to end.
The ones that I'll be with, yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
And then
not-
beyond that, then the distribution.
We
And,
want to do about 3 or 4 a year. I won't be doing all of them. I'll be doing 1, maybe 2.
okay, excellent, thank you. And Joel Petrikis?
Nick.
Joel did
You're
not.
supposed to be here.
No, that's him at the end there. I was not able to get a bio, so I just made stuff up. And actually, I didn't. I did a Google search, and I found 2 references under your name, and I'm not making this up. I've got 2 references under your name. Please tell us which one you are. The first one says that you are at the Joliet Correctional Center doing 5 to 10 years for armed robbery.
That was a long time ago.
I'm glad you were able to make it. And then hopefully the next one came from the IMDb site. It says that you are a graduate of Grand Valley State University's film program, and that you live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Far from the entertainment industry, clearly.
Yeah.
Which I guess allows you to do films without any kind of interference,
Right.
creative interference. His 2010 Super 8 short Coyote, focusing on a junkie werewolf, was his first work with an actor, Joshua Berg, who I understand is doing 5 to 10 years at Juliet. His first feature film, Ape, won Best New Director in the 2012 Locarno Film Festival. Joel is also a film critic for the Chicago Reader.
Not a film critic for the Chicago Reader.
Ah, okay.
I don't know where that came from.
Not at all.
Maybe you got a positive review from the Chicago Reader. I write for.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. It says you wish you were a film reviewer.
Yeah.
my
I don't
apologies.
wish.
Let's see here. Nick Balthazar. Nick is an actor with a Broadway credit when you were at the age of 14. Is this correct?
I sucked badly, but I was there.
What show? Do you mind telling us what show you were in and
I can
how
still
that
do
happened?
it.
No, I didn't ask that.
It's a long story, but I was probably the worst actor that ever was on a Broadway stage, and I was so bad. This is unfortunately a true story, that we were with an Belgian company performing together with an American company, and we were going to do one song together. And when we tried it out, they said like, "Who's that singing off key in the back?" And we were like, "Oh, that must be Joel." That was me.
Was it a musical?
So it was a musical,
Okay,
and they asked me
that
to
makes
lip
more
it.
sense.
And then, before going on, my partner in kind of a dance with 2 kind of faded on me. So my Broadway premiere was lipping with some kind of ghost in my arms.
Wow.
True story, I'm
Wow.
afraid.
And how long was your run on Broadway? Before they
They sent
realized
us
what they
back
had?
with tar and feathers to Belgium.
So it was a limited run.
Yeah, we were in a. We made the first children's theater that was not children's theater, but it had children in them performing even before like the Fame School became famous.
Were you reviewed? Or if you blocked it
Yeah,
out?
not on Broadway. I don't remember if we were reviewed on Broadway, but no, we toured this thing for 3 years, all through the world. So, and that's how you get
On this panel.
yeah,
That's
on
how
the
you
panel.
can be a writer and a journalist and a columnist and a TV and theater director, which you also are.
Life happens to you while you're making plans for something else, is
There you
what John
go.
Lennon said.
Nick was born and raised in Belgium, and in 2007 he wrote and directed his first feature film, Ben X, which won 14 international awards, including the Grand Prix, and the Audience Award at the Montreal World Film Festival. The film was also Belgium's entry into the Academy Awards of 2007, and was also nominated for the European Film Awards. And in 2011 he wrote and directed his second feature film, Time of My Life, the English translation, which has already been sold to 13 countries, which is remarkable. He also speaks 7 languages, which will prove to be an absolutely useless skill on this panel, but I'm glad you have those skills, and thank you, welcome. We have one missing panelist, as I indicated. He's still doing a Q&A, and I thought I'd introduce him anyway, just so when he comes you know who he is, and not from not just somebody that just randomly came into the room. His name is Brandon Harris. Brandon Harris is the writer-director of Red Legs, a New York Times critics pick. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio, and Brandon is also a contributing editor of Filmmaker magazine. And for those of you that know, Filmmaker magazine is a quarterly publication. It's got a readership of over 60,000 people. It covers just about everything associated with independent film. The magazine includes interviews, case studies, financing, distribution information, festival reports, technical and production updates, legal pointers, and filmmakers discussing filmmakers in their own words. And prior to this panel, I actually looked at some issues and I noticed that there was no criticism. So Brandon, what have you got to say for yourself? That's what I thought. So actually, this is a nice segue, Clint, if you don't mind, to what we're here to talk about, which is criticism, or the lack thereof, in independent film. Let's just talk about criticism in film in general.
Sure.
You've been doing this for a long time. What do you perceive to be the primary function of a film critic? What do you do? What do you hope you achieve?
Really to inform and entertain. I mean, I wish I could say I was seeking higher truths for the greater good of America or something, but I'm not, and I don't. I try to be entertaining in my reviews. It's a general interest publication and website, and that's my angle, if you will. Unless it's a Terrence Malick film, and then I have to go into weird places and say strange things. So I think that's it. I think you try to get to as many films. You can't see them all, or at least I can't. I don't know how the others feel. You know, if there's 8 or 9 films opening on a weekend, and they don't screen all of them in advance either. That's another side to it, the studios. But I think it's to get the word out there, and hopefully in the review have some fun with it. Be an entertaining read, the review itself. And just be honest. Tell people it's my opinion, and many people disagree with my opinion. And I hear from them quite often, which is great. It's fun to argue and talk about it. But you just have to be honest and lay it out there and say, this is a magnificent film, and here's why, or this is just a dreadful production, and here's why. Do
you try to be a film advocate? Is that undermining?
Well, you do for the smaller films, the low budget films, the festival films. You are more of an advocate. I mean, if it's a major, if it's Avatar, that needs no help from you. But particularly at festivals like Sundance, which is the biggest American festival, or in Toronto, which is just this amazingly huge confluence of the major studios, of small independent films, of foreign films, of documentaries. And those are more marketplaces, Sundance and Toronto, where films are actually being picked up by distributors, whereas in Cleveland it's more of an exhibition festival. A few deals are made, but it's mostly just for people to enjoy films.
Right. So when you write a review of the shows at our festival, is it still embracing that general entertainment mode of writing, or are you trying to, since it's international in scope, it's independent in scope, are you trying to offer some insight into what these people do? Are you offering a bigger picture that maybe some casual film goers don't see when they go to see a movie? That's
a good question. Hopefully, and you're always looking for trends and something interesting to write about, something that's worth sharing with folks. But you're right. In the festival films, which don't have the major distributors, may not have major distributors, don't have the big marketing campaign, you do tend to treat them in a different way, and you just need to, get the word out and talk. And these guys can speak to that. And speaking to filmmakers, they want a review. They'd like a good one, but at least a review, a photo, in print, in the paper, online's good too. But just to have that attention. So you do. I mean, you can get a jump on films at festivals too. The films at Sundance, we won't see until June, July, August, or a year from now.
Right.
That kind of thing. You can get a jump on them. You can start building them up in advance. They may get sold there, or they're still working on deals, and they'll finally come here to the Cedar Lee Theater, if you're familiar with that locally, or the Capitol Theater, that kind of thing.
So, Rosie, as a coordinator of a festival, do you deal with press relations at all? Do you deal with the critics?
No, we have a whole separate press department that takes care of all the journalists and critics that come through, and the publicists. I tend to deal more with just sales agents and distributors. But our press department, a lot of times, just because of what Sundance is, every film is already generating a lot of publicity before the festival, especially in our U.S. competition. But what I've found in working with our press department, that nowadays they're turning away a lot more people to accredit, because we reach a critical mass. Like, you can't keep just accrediting however many industry and however many press without still having more seats in theaters or more theaters. Because nowadays, with technology how it is, and everyone, a lot of people have their own blogs where they do film reviews, and they have a following, and people read what they write about movies. But it's a fine line for our press department to ride of, okay, which bloggers do we accredit, which ones we don't, because we can't just accredit every blogger that applies. Even with journalists in general, a lot of journalists have been coming to Sundance for years, and they'll keep getting accredited. But as other publications, especially online, arise, there's a whole new batch of people that want to be accredited, and for a lot of reasons, they should be accredited. It's just a balance of keeping it realistic of how many people we can accredit.
Yeah.
So.
And for a festival like Sundance, is there a food chain? Is there a priority given to national, worldwide versus local, or?
I guess you could call it a food chain. We have different tiers of press and industry passes, and I do think, depending on what kind of outlet you're writing for, does inform what kind of pass you're issued through the press office. And especially if you're newer onto the scene, the press office isn't familiar with you. But if you were someone, say, like, R.I.P. Roger Ebert, he would go see 10, 12 films a day, so he would get an all access pass, versus if you were just someone from a smaller outlet or an online smaller outlet, who's just starting out, then you kind of have to prove yourself first in a lot of ways.
Interesting. Gentlemen, so what's been the role of criticism in your independent film life? How does criticism factor into your business? Or does it? In your craft and what you do?
For me, it really doesn't, because I'm not on the same level as Nick, where, especially for my first film, Ape, it's so polarizing in nature that any review is okay and acceptable. We have a distributor, and they totally understand that. They just don't want the mediocre reviews. They don't want it was okay. Like we have, like, it was great, we loved it, or well, that was terrible, how did this win any awards? So that's kind of how I prefer the reviews to be either horrible or really great. So I guess that's the only thing that matters, is I want to evoke some kind of strong, reaction from the critics.
Yeah.
And that's, luckily we're with a distributor who appreciates even the bad reviews, the ones that are scathing, and we just write it off as, oh, they didn't get it, and that, it really brought something out of them. So that's the good stuff.
Have you ever used the negative reviews as in a positive to push?
I don't know if you did your research or not, or you just, because our poster for the movie has one quote on it. It says it was really bad, from someone from IndieWire.
Yeah.
then, then we put the laurel next to it of the best new director. So it's kind of this great dichotomy there of.
When the Broadway show Xanadu came out, its big banner was the critics loved it, really, because it didn't expect any of that. So you can turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah, I like just kind of messing with people and the whole system. So
does it impact on your next film? Does it impact on the way that you look at your craft? Because the textbooks suggest that criticism, especially film criticism, is like the standard bearer for the arts. That when a film critic says this is a proper approach, or this is a dead motif, or this is going out of style, that they expect the critics to respond.
Yeah, I would never take that into consideration for what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I expect people to not understand it most of the time. So for me, I mean, I would never change anything according to what a critic says.
You've got your vision, and no matter what the press is, you follow through.
Yeah, I'd probably take like a friend's recommendation more than a critic. No offense. I mean, I used to write film criticism in college and in high school, so I appreciate criticism. It's just I don't know. It kind of fuels me to push things a little bit further and kind of bother people more if need be, really. And
do you have a relationship with your local critics? Do you know who they are? Do you have a rapport?
Yeah. They're all really nice and supportive.
Do they get what you do? Do you think?
Nah, they kind of say they do, but when they start saying why they get it, it's like, that's kind of not what you're going for. But all right, I appreciate support, any kind of support.
Do you feel the obligation or the desire to school them, perhaps, so that they could?
No, I'm not. No. I don't really stick up for myself that kind of way. I just let it. All right, you didn't get it. All right, that's fine. I don't. Yeah. I'm not one to kind of like sell myself and shove my vision down their throat. The movie speaks for itself. You didn't get it.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you got it, that's great. But I'm not that. I guess I'm not that passionate about my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's like that. There it is on screen, and I'm not gonna.
Let it speak for itself.
Yeah. I take it pretty lightly, criticism and my whole view on what I do.
Sure.
I don't take it very seriously.
And Nick, how about you?
Well, my situation is, of course, that I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've been a critic for, and here I can admit it, in Europe I would never tell, for 7 or 8 years, and then crossed over to the dark side, or the bright side, and became a filmmaker since. I always remembered what Kenneth Tynan, one of the famous British theatre critics, said. That a theater critic is someone who knows the way but cannot drive the car, and an even better quote is that a film critic is like the eunuch in the harem. Yeah, that's right. That he's seen it done every day, and only himself. And I didn't want to stay a eunuch for the rest of my life, so I developed this. But in fact, I found out that many filmmakers were, of course, critics before. Godard, Truffaut, but also in American cinema. And in fact, it's a popular sport to go critic bashing, but the job is very similar. I used to be in seats looking at a screen and asking myself the questions, is what I'm seeing truthful? Does it stick? Is it meaningful? Do I believe it? Questions like those. And then, so many years later, you're before your monitor on a set where, okay, you've organized what you're seeing there, but you're just asking yourself the same questions. Is what I'm seeing truthful? Is it do I believe it? Only difference is when it isn't, you can't just start writing the review and say this is shit. But you have to try and find a solution. But we are closer to each other than we want to admit sometimes, and that is also why this relationship will always be. So it's like a marriage. We rant at each other and we love each other. We love each other when we like each other, and we hate each other when they hate us or what we've done. But I tend to disagree with people who say, well, I don't care about film criticism, because of course I would like, but this is the fuel in your motor, and that's the reality. A film critic can make the career of your movie, or have it die down.
So you've seen that in your career. You've seen films making or breaking a film, its distribution, its acceptance.
With this, I mean, what's been said also is true for the non-independent. I mean, Avatar, you could basically say anything you wanted about movies like that. And often, when I was still a film critic, I worked for radio, and the radio is not like tiny as here; it's quite important. And so, when I would be slashing Meryl Streep for half an hour or something, they would call me from the distributor to thank me that I had talked about the film for so long, and I had dropped the title, and it's more about attention these days, but it's true that, for example, I mean, in my case, and that's maybe another issue, but it's film festivals. Those are also so hugely important. I mean, thanks to the Montreal Film Festival, my film went around the world.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been there. I would have been in Belgium, where after the 5-star rave reviews in Montreal, I got slashed by my colleagues. And Montreal wouldn't have been there. I would have been the film to fight those two asshole critics that really had an issue with the film.
By the way, Ben X, Nick's previous film, is very good, and I'm happy to say I gave it an A. So
he has good taste.
We won't be fighting up here. Yeah.
I think going back a little bit to talking about, you were asking, is there a food chain? And there are different kinds of critics too, though. I mean, there's industry critics who like make or break a person's career based on sales. I mean, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. I mean, those write for a specific group of people. So you get a good review there. That's money. But you get a good review in, say, I don't know, Portland. It's not the same kind of thing because it's not an industry-read thing.
Right.
And so, and then there are different kinds of critics in the sense of like, there's people who kind of fall into the job, and there's people who are just absolutely, they do it because they are, like us, film fans. Like, they love movies. Roger Ebert.
Right.
He loved movies. And that's why he did it. But they weren't there because they said, oh, it's a job I could do, and you know, I can give my opinion.
So can a piece of criticism at a festival like Clint's work at Cleveland's Film Festival, can it impact on whether your films get picked up elsewhere?
Hugely, of course, yeah. And for sure, if for example, you even, I mean, a critic now in the Plain Dealer would help us out tremendously, and another A would be great for them.
Because see about that. Yeah.
Because in this day and age where distance is doesn't exist anymore, I just put the link on our Facebook website, and I push it through, and hey, we made it big in Cleveland. People in Belgium might not really know where Cleveland is, but hey, it's America, you've hit it big, and it does impact. Yeah.
So reviews are something that filmmakers, their handlers, the distributors, that's something that they clip and distribute for
the good ones.
The good ones.
Yeah.
So that work can appear elsewhere and have a life or continued life.
And that's why, I mean, I'm for one really happy to be here in Cleveland, but also with this new film, I'm more struggling to get it through. So any even blogger, and so we've come out now on DVD, my new film. You see how I'm working this thing.
They're being sold in the lobby, by the way.
And any, I mean, the reviews so far have been really very positive, but they're small, non-industry reviews, and so then you can push these on yourself, and yeah, they are pretty important. Yeah.
So Clint, given the significance of of a review in the life of an independent film. It's continued distribution, where it gets picked up, perhaps some of the awards. It gets put on the radar for awards. Is that pressure for you? Is that something you keep in mind? That you're setting the agenda, that you're influencing careers, that you're not only moving an audience to see one film or another, but you're likely impacting on the life of the artist?
I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know that I think that going in. I think you're happy when it turns out well for people and you're able to help, promote it if it's a really good film and you want to tell, you're excited to tell people about it. There's two sides of it. I mean, that a lot of people went through a lot of time, trouble, sweat, years of their lives, in some cases a lot of money to make this film, and so there's all of that, and you feel all of that, and you're aware of that. On the other hand, you're just watching it and reacting to it, and you just have to write how you really feel about it. So, good or bad. And,
it's your job.
yeah.
It's still your job.
It's still your job. And hopefully, because given the problems that the Plain Dealer's been having, they're dropping staff daily. So far it seems that the critics are safe. TV critic, film critic, theater critic, music critic.
That is true. Yeah, we're
critic.
fortunate. A lot of newspapers have cut their arts and entertainment staff significantly.
LA Times.
LA
Exactly.
Times, Chicago Tribune,
No.
Philadelphia Inquirer.
They'll
Yeah.
just use
Right.
freelancers. And, well, as you know, or the folks who live around here, I mean, the art scene is important in this town, and luckily the paper still recognizes that. So hopefully we'll hang on. But yes, there are more cuts, unfortunately, of staff coming later in the summer, and they're going through a lot of changes, and it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is. And
yeah.
you're noticing in the film
Yes.
festival that there's more and more unqualified or unauthoritative
Well-
bloggers that are having an impact.
Yeah, but also going back to problems that print media is having. Big outlets are making cuts in their arts staff because they're cutting people that have been working at those newspapers for years and years because they've reached a pinnacle in terms of where they are in their career and what salary they're making, and what do they replace those people with are younger,
Right.
less experienced people who are willing to work for the LA Times or Variety or Hollywood Reporter for a lot less money
Right.
than the staff they were keeping, which I think is detrimental in a lot of ways because you go from reading a review by a seasoned critic who's been around for a long time, who's very, very passionate, to someone that might just be fresh out of college and is just
Right.
excited to work for peanuts.
But they're also doing more because they're blogging and they're tweeting
Yeah.
and they're capturing things on video and having an internet presence. So so they bring less experience and less knowledge, but they've got more formats and maybe
Yeah.
they're reaching a larger audience. Are you finding that?
Yes, because I think especially trying to reach a younger audience, that's how a younger audience gets all their information now is through the internet, So I do feel like people can seek out other outlets that are not traditional media outlets and get their information that way. So.
And Brandon, what do you think about that? Still not talking, are you? We'll get something out of it. So what's the future for the independent film industry, given the change that's happening, I think, in the world of film criticism? It's not going away, but it's sort of changing its stripes. It's getting younger. It's getting more varied, less authoritative, a lot less name recognition, but more voices out there. Is that a good thing, do you think, for what you guys do? Or is it going to be more limiting in getting the word out?
It was weird because I was just watching recently the making of From Dusk Till Dawn, Robert Rodriguez film from the 90s, where I think it's Harvey Keitel, he's being interviewed, he's like, oh, just think in 10 years there's gonna be kids that can all afford video cameras, and I bet they're all gonna be making their own movies, and it's gonna be much different. And here we are. I mean, that's what's happening. I don't think that I would not have been able to afford to make my film without advances in technology.
Yeah.
Buying an HD camera for $2,000 and making the film for under $5,000 for the whole feature film.
Wow.
I mean, that was impossible 10
Under
years ago.
5,000?
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Yeah.
And what's amazing is
That's
that it
my
doesn't
word.
look like a $5,000 production. Production values are great. Relatively great.
So I mean, for me, that's how I just like to keep everything.
That's what
really
I get to
minimal.
be on the panel, man.
So yeah, so those advances in technology allow you to make a movie with 2 or 3 people, a feature film, you know, for under $5,000, and yeah, you get more filmmakers and more competition for us. Like we're competing with, I mean, you know, obviously Sundance, their level of entries has like gone from like 4,000 in '95 to what was the last one, like 18,000 or something, just absurd.
And that's shorts and features.
Yeah, shorts and features. So
Are they creating new categories at Sundance for the new types of films that are being created?
The last one we had was started 2 years ago, which was is called Next, which is our smaller budget category, which has been successful, you know, but definitely, like I was just telling Clint, the advances in technology has been the great equalizer, where anyone can make a movie, which is great. But for like film festivals, then you see, like, I think I was telling you at dinner last night, you know, our submissions for shorts this past year, I think, was 6,000, 6,500 for 50 slots in the short film program. You know, so it's just like trying to get into an Ivy League school, you know. But then, you know, people put so much weight into, you know, oh, I got to get into Sundance, I got to get into Sundance. And then when filmmakers don't, it's for them, it's like, oh, my life is over. And a lot of, you know, times I meet a lot of filmmakers and I get to know them as they progress through making a movie. And when their film doesn't get into Sundance because they think it's the end all and be all, and, you know, my film didn't get into Sundance, nobody's going to know about my film. But now there's so many great regional festivals all over the country, like Cleveland, like CineQuest, you know, that Mike helps run. And I tell people, like, it's not the end of the world, you know, that your film didn't get into Sundance. There are a lot of great festivals that your film can have a life in and reach local audiences all around, not only the country, but the world. You know, you can easily make a film, if it doesn't get into Sundance and it gets into, you know, another festival, you can easily spend a whole year and a half traveling on someone else's dime with your film, playing domestic and international festivals, you know, and reaching, to be honest, a wider audience. Because a lot of times our audience at Sundance, you know, half of it is industry people. Yeah. And we're jaded, right? You know?
No.
Is there communication between festivals? Is there a heads up that some great films are coming through, that they're getting some great buzz, that a piece has gotten wonderful reviews and it's coming your way? Is there that kind of legality?
It depends on the time of year. I mean, when you guys are prepping, we're prepping, so it's like it's almost impossible to really talk during that time. But I talk with Bill, who works Cleveland here all the time, and we compare, and we end up shipping films from our festival to here, and so on and so on and so on. So it's I think you know, the one thing that you just mentioned, though, Rosie, was that, you know, it's not the end if you don't get into Sundance, and it's true, because you could go to Sundance and get lost too, because there's so many big films there with name actors that a film with nobody in it could get ignored and not get any reviews and not get any distribution. I mean, it just happens every year. It's like there's only a small percentage of films that get distribution.
Right.
And I know this is not really our topic, but it is something that, you know, getting to another festival, you get great reviews there, and you know, it's just where you go. It depends on how your film is perceived, how it gets to the media.
I was just going to say, off of Michael and Rosie's point, there's this funny dichotomy about festivals too, because you have your little indie film, no one's ever heard of it, plays at Sundance. I think of Little Miss Sunshine a few years ago. And it was hilarious. It was the hit of the festival in terms of one of the funniest films. But then it's acquired by Fox Searchlight, which is great for the people who made the film. Woo, we're thrilled. But so is it still a little quirky indie film? Now it's Fox Searchlight. Now it's got the power of 20th Century Fox behind it, marketing, distribution strategies. It comes out in August or
and
all the build
all
up.
of a sudden doubles.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's a funny thing. Is it's still an indie film? We had a movie shot here last summer. It was called Toy's House when it filmed here. title's recently been changed to The Kings of Summer, played at Sundance just this past January. Did well. CBS Films purchased it, changed the title, and so now you don't have quite as much access to the people who made it. You're not as quite as in touch. Now it's the machinery of a smaller studio behind it. So it's a funny evolution.
And when we were in the green room getting ready for this panel, Nick and Joel and I we were all talking about how the very nature of independent film has changed. That technology has allowed some of the lesser budget movies to come up, but also a lot of the big studios have these branches where they're making these independent films, but they're bringing in huge directors, they've got a huge budget, huge stars. It's kind of changing the nature of what an independent film is, isn't it? Is that impacting on what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely, and I do think that it's interesting that we have people from important festivals here, because I just wanted to backtrack to that, because that makes the role of the critic even more important. And why? Because 18,000 entries. I know that all these, and they're all film fans, they're film lovers, but they have stacks of films to watch. Tell me it's not true. So what do? They watch the first 10 minutes of your film. And for example, my film has a totally different tone of voice in the beginning as in the end, because I want to draw in a crowd, because I come from a small country. I cannot afford to make only an artsy-fartsy film, but it becomes more of a very art festival film in the second part. But these programmers see the first 10 minutes and say, well, that's not our thing, and bam, it goes away. And that's where you need a film critic who will at least see the whole film and then like it or not. And I think the discussion, the bore issue of so many panels has always been, what's the role of the critic? But it's really important that we the role of the critic is he's the guy who will still watch your film, because with all this indie stuff, fortunately, that's coming out, so much more is to be seen. And one other thing, like Belgium is, we are 10 million people. Flanders 6 million who speak this strange language that some people call a throat disease. But still, we make like 25 feature films a year, and 10 of them are really, really good and go around the world. And we have a very, very flowering film industry now, because we've seen that as filmmakers we should really be, instead of competitors, we should help each other. That has tremendously helped. But also the media are behind this, are our motor also, and give us the interviews and the covers, and that has changed tremendously. You look at the States, Cleveland is a big city with so many talented people. I'm sure some of them are here, and yet I don't know how many feature films are made in Cleveland.
Few.
Very few, and it's the same in many other big American cities, where you have to go over Sundance and so why not try to be locally more supportive of your look? And yesterday we found out why. Yeah. Why in Europe we have a more flowering art scene. Do you want to know why? It's bars, ladies and gentlemen. Bars should stay open later. And that is where creativity arises. It's between 3 in the morning and 7 where you, let's make a film, Joel, let's do it, man. Yeah, let's and
Then you wake up the next morning. Oh,
but then you drink again and you do it.
That's the after party.
Yeah. And Joel, do you strategize in where you send your films in terms of festivals or more exposure?
I get rejected from Sundance every year. I let it, you know, slide off. I always just send it to Sundance because, like, I won't regret not getting rejected. All right, well, we got rejection, we tried, so let's move on to the next one. Yeah, luckily that didn't stop the momentum of this one. And I just knew a few people, and we got into a different Locarno Film Festival was the world premiere, and we were lucky enough. It wasn't so much the press. It was we didn't actually get a lot of good press. It was kind of it was more winning an award there that kind of kept the momentum going. So yes, Sundance is obviously in the U.S. the big one, but there's ways of launching it, especially overseas. Is Sundance isn't competition, is it, with money? I can't remember.
No money, but
No.
yeah, we have 4 competitions.
Yeah. So a lot of the, like, if you can get into a festival that has some award money, that'll help you, you know, make your next movie or quit your job, things like
And
like
Cleveland
that.
does several
Yes, it does.
awards.
Yeah.
Cash.
Yeah. So if you can get into a smaller one, you know, cash works. The distribution deals we've signed anyway are basically for little to no money at all. So distribution just means more people get to see it. But festival awards has been the way to finance the next film and keep it going.
Interesting. So this is the part of the afternoon where we'd like to open it up to questions to our panelists from you. Touched on some really interesting issues, gained some great insight into the independent film industry and the role of the critic. Are there any questions? Do we have a microphone, or should you stand and ask the question? Can you stand and be loud, please?
This is for Mr. Joel. How do you go about your writing process?
Could you hear that in the back?
How do I go about the writing process? I have no set routine. Weirdly enough, on the first one, Ape, it was the first feature, so I just wanted to cram as many ideas as I had for every short film into one. So it's just like this mixture of just this mashup of every single wild idea I've ever had. So I think that's why people react to it so strongly. Either it's, oh, this is great, this is just insanity, or wow, this doesn't make any sense, this isn't cohesive. And that was 6 months. I'd just chip away. Sometimes inspiration would hit, you'd write for 8 hours, sometimes 8 minutes. But on the next one's already written, and oddly enough, because of some of the momentum from Ape, I got an email from what is her name, Elise, from the Sundance Screenwriters Lab.
Oh, McKinney, yes.
Yeah, and she had heard about Ape and wanted to know if there was anything else in the works, another screenplay for they have a Screenwriters Lab in January and June, and that she wrote me October 10th, I think, something like that. And I was still kind of working a day job. She said, we want to see what you have. And I was like, oh yeah, I got something, I just need to polish it up. I hadn't written anything. And she's like, oh yeah, well just, you know, polish it up, and if you get to us by the end of the month, we'd like to take a look at it. So I literally, as soon as I got the email, called my job and quit. And wrote a screenplay, locked myself in my girlfriend's apartment where I could get away from everybody. And wrote the whole screenplay in 10 days, and then sent it to some people for feedback and polished it up and got it over to her. We didn't get into that Screenwriters Lab, but luckily I'm persistent enough to write her back after that one and say, hey, we made a bunch of changes. I know you don't want to reread the same stuff, but it's way different now. So how about can you read it over for consideration in the June lab? She's like, absolutely, send it over. So for me, it's just having someone else give me a deadline. Otherwise, it would take forever. I just don't have the self-discipline to do that. So.
Had you actually done any rewriting when you contacted her to say that you've rewritten it?
Yeah, actually, we did do a lot. There was 2 versions. One that's like good, the way I like it, and then there's the Sundance version where I think I'm gonna just write it the way I think that they're looking for. So basically means chopping out all the good scenes. The good scenes to me are the ones that really don't fit with the story. It's just like, wow, that's really cool. So we just cut out all the really cool
Can't
stuff.
be perfect, otherwise you won't have anything to workshop.
I know. Yeah, I know that too, because they chop you up in that lab, from what I've heard. So yeah, I just have no self-discipline. If someone gives me a deadline, a serious deadline, then I'll do it. I can if I need to write for 12 hours a day, no problem. No.
Was someone right behind you that had a question?
Do you get a new job?
No, I don't even have a job.
Hi, thanks for speaking. I have a short in the festival, and I'm prepping my feature. And I was just curious if, for all different perspectives, from the critics to the festivals to the filmmakers, how filmmakers can take sort of their destiny into their own hands. A lot of it is writing, scribbling on, you know, your Sharpie onto your DVD, sending it to Cleveland, hopefully getting in. But is it ever, you know, from a critic's perspective, is it ever appropriate to, for a filmmaker to approach a critic from the filmmakers or film festival perspective? You know, can you share maybe a success story? Obviously, things like Beast of the Southern Wild was an excellent critic-driven film. Even not Sundance, but Tiny Furniture coming out of South by Southwest. And then from the filmmaker perspective, how you mentioned posting on Facebook, for instance, but how you've utilized those positive critiques, or even the negative critiques, which I'm sure you got more positives coming out of Locarno, but how you've utilized those to take, you know, how a filmmaker becomes, you know, self-aware, how they can use those things.
I can maybe answer that because well, coming from both sides, I more than maybe my younger colleagues knew that your job as a filmmaker nowadays starts even before the writing, trying to find money, etc. But it also ends much later. It used to be like we were the artists, you know, we just make the film and then, no, now you also have to make your marketing, and you have to start with your marketing even before starting to write sometimes. Well, and so never abandon all shame in this. That's a really key issue. And for a European, especially a Belgian, we are like a self-effacing people. Because we got invaded so much, but that's another story. We're like, oh, there's nothing to find here. We're like, run us over, go invade someone else. But as a filmmaker now, I mean, it's really embarrassing, like what I said. I will take any piece of I will take even this film panel and say, we had huge, interesting discussions in Cleveland, and this will be cool for on Facebook and stuff. And it is very influential for critics, because there is the buzz. You know, oh yeah, things have been going on. This film has been going to other festivals, and I'm sure that probably festival coordinators are also very aware of they talk to each other, and that's normal. They go to the same festivals and to the same bars again. Go to those same bars, buy them drinks, and that'll help you great. That's the second.
I think we have a thread running through this panel. Bars. Duly noted.
Well, I was going to add also, I mean, one of the things that I noticed most with the filmmakers who come to our festival, because we get a lot, and is that 99% of them don't know how to market themselves, have no concept of how to market themselves. And I mean, they don't know that they should get a publicist. They don't know that they need to be at the forefront, meeting people, talking to people, being on social media, everything. They don't know how to do it. And schools don't teach you that. I mean, they don't. They don't teach you how to market yourself. You have to learn that or just get out there and do it. There's no real way to explain that except that that's what I noticed the most. I mean, even it took me a long time to understand that when I was starting out. It took me such a long time to do that because I don't like talking about myself. I really don't I don't like doing it. Nobody does, but you have to do that as an artist, as a filmmaker in the business world. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell your movie.
Or you'll be taken advantage of.
You'll be taken advantage of. I mean, I know so many filmmakers who sold their film for peanuts, and it cost them $2 million to make. So then you have to go into the thing of like selling territories at that point, because that's how you make your money back. You don't sell in the U.S. You're not going to make your money back in selling just the U.S.
So how would better marketing change that? They get more interest in it? They make it a competitive sport to get the film? How would marketing change that?
It leaves you in their minds. It's making your mark. I mean, it's like if a film shows and they've done nothing to market themselves and they get no reviews, no one's going to remember it or know about it. But if you get into people's minds, you're around a festival, you have a gimmick at a festival. I mean, one of the films that we premiered a few years ago, which I think showed here too, in Cleveland, Dine to Do Letterman. They came to our festival and they premiered. And they had an entire team come in. They had these buttons that they made, dying to do blank, and they went around town and they handed those buttons out and had people write, before they give them a button, they had to write what they're dying to do. And that was, they did that for the entire town, and we had people seeking them out around the festival. They ended up winning the audience award, they ended up winning the jury award. And it's because people knew who they were around the entire time. And they were marketing themselves the entire time.
I forget the gentleman's name, but the star of the featured guy in the film. It was in Cleveland. It got a positive review in the Plain Dealer. He cut out the review in the Plain Dealer, put it on a board, and wore it around his neck at the festival.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it won an award here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about self-promotion.
I don't know if that was why, but
No, it's all about self-promotion. You have to do that. You have to let people know who you are. Otherwise, they're not going to remember you. And that's something that's important in all aspects, from the filmmaking side to the film festival side to the critic side, all that stuff. It's like you make that mark somehow.
So if you can't control what festivals you get into, you can't control how a critic's going to respond, you should take some partial control over your product.
What's the name of your short?
This is Lipstick.
Okay.
You should have mentioned it 3 times already.
Learn. I was trying to help you out too.
Thank you. It's like Wednesday and Thursday. So.
There you go.
And if I could add something too, along with the advances in technology, back in the day, even when I started at Sundance 9 years ago, a lot of filmmakers who submitted to Sundance and other festivals, I'm sure how they financed their film was they asked everyone in their family and every one of their friends to give money. Well, now we got things like Kickstarter, and that has also been another equalizer in a way where you can extend your reach of trying to get funding for your movie. It's not just you're going to max out your credit cards anymore. You probably still will, but you're not solely relying on your friends and family. Aunt Martha, can you give me $5,000? Now, with better marketing, you can create a Kickstarter campaign and get people who you don't even know from Adam, who lives clear across the other side of the country, putting in $100, $500, $1,000 into your movie and creating these fun little gimmicks of what they get if you reach your funding goal. And, some of it is, you get a credit. And for a lot of people, that means a lot, someone who lives in a small town in the middle of nowhere, they can tell their friends that, hey, I'm a producer on a movie because they donated, however much money. And yes, Kickstarter's been on everyone's tongues lately because of the Veronica Mars raised $10 million in 9 hours, and oh God, it's going to change the face of, how films are financed. And they can correct, they can weigh in on this too, but that was an anomaly because it already had a built-in audience of rabid fans. I'm one of those rabid fans, although I did not put any money in, who already knew that they wanted to see this product. So I don't think it's really going to change the model of Kickstarter and other similar websites that are crowdfunding sources.
Speaking of Kickstarter, just briefly, Amy Finkel is a director, has forever in the festival. She'll be up on the stage later today. She used Kickstarter, and it worked out very well. She got much more than she had. She can address that later. Just real quickly on short films, obviously that's a great stepping stone to features for many directors. Fede Alvarez is the most recent example of that. All he had done was a few shorts, and one was just online, and the right people happened to see it online. and he directed the Evil Dead remake that just came out a few weeks ago. I thought it was terrible, by the way, but he has a feature film, and the original Evil Dead was a classic low budget Sam Raimi in 1981. But anyway, Shorts is, you know, a great in for many directors.
Yes.
I was writing by the university on the health line, and my eyes went down to the floor, and on the side of a young man's tennis shoe was film contacts needed and his phone number. And he evidently was a film student here at Cleveland State. He may even be in the auditorium. And I said to him, what kind of film contacts are you looking for? He said, I've written a few scripts, and I want to get into acting also. I said, Google this name, Kathy Lebinsky. I said, she's my next door neighbor, and she's now in charge of script approval for Universal Pictures. And she determines which movies are going to get a $30 million budget or a $70 million budget. So he, you know, took the name. My question to the panel is, have you had any moments of synchronicity, of coincidence, where a stranger helped you connect the dots to make your film happen?
Yes. Well, it's a wonderful story, and I'm like, did he make that 30 million?
This was about 3 weeks ago.
No, the great thing I can tell you the digital universes that we've come so close together yet being so far apart. For example, so my film Ben X was based on a play, and the great thing now is that a young actor just saw the film, saw in some kind of article that it was based on the play. He's now doing the play in Cincinnati, and then I'm coming to Cleveland, and so. The great is that synchronicity. To me, it is, because I've been planning a remake of the same story. Imagine that this Ben X. Are you getting? The story has been made into a musical and a Swedish remake, and we're still working on this American remake. So the only thing that makes this industry work, as you well know, is actors. So not even the people who read scripts, not even, I've been, thanks to the fact that I have an agent in every studio, the only thing that will propel this film is when I have an actress and an actor that will say, yes, we will do this film. I've been shopping around the script for 4 years. It plays in the Rust Belt. This is actually true, and that's what the moment you look for that that person to be so passionate about a project. And so long story to just give this really important piece of advice: before you get anyone else interested, try to get a major actor. And that's stupid as it is. These people, of course, know that they are the only real motors of projects, and hence they are bombarded with so many scripts a day, and they need their agents and their managers to have people read those scripts for them, etc. But you know where to find these people? They're in bars.
They're in bars. You'll have to come back next year and let us know how that played out. Another question, please. Yes.
I'd like to know, what film critics do you always read, and are there particular publications or film-related websites that you follow?
Roger Ebert, I did.
Yeah. Poor Roger. Just passed
I mean,
away.
I've always,
Roger Ebert.
Read his work.
Yeah. I mean, he had amassed a huge Twitter following. Like, he embraced the social media aspect. of
Actually,
it,
one of the
you know.
very few old-time critics that embraced all the new forms for communication. So he was out there. Yeah. Anybody else?
But he's one of those people who I've mentioned earlier, like that just loved movies. And it's like
Yeah.
you felt that he loved the movies. And actually, I say the people I usually read are the ones who I feel really love movies, not ones that I feel are just writing their opinion and just putting it out there. I mean, there's one in our town who works for the weekly free paper, and every time you read an article from him, you know that he loves what he's doing. And that's when I read something like that, that's what I go back to his articles, just because I know that he is passionate. But when I read something from, say, I don't know, I can't say the LA Times because I always read them, but like if I read sometimes from New York, I feel it's kind of cold, and I don't necessarily get into it as much.
Any major magazines that you all delve into for critical review?
Film comment until they gave us a really bad review.
Done with that.
I'm all for coming from radio. I think one of the best radio shows on film is BBC 5 Live with entertainment. It's Simon Mayo and don't let me blank on his name, and Mark Kermode. And it's really, you guys don't know it. It's you can just download the podcast, and it's great. You go jogging, you do anything, and you have 2 hours of two guys discussing films, and all the major stars that are in England come to the show and make time to have really great interviews. So that's really that would be my. And you just download it on your iPod and listen. And a film critic needs to be entertaining these days also, and they're all also really funny. So that would be my.
Clint, do you have time to read other people's?
You know, it's a funny question. I don't really. Well, I don't want to read anything before I've seen it. You know, be influenced or whatever, and then later kind of splash around for fun. I used to read Roger quite a bit too, and I grew up in Chicago and read him for many years there. I don't really. I used to like David Anson a lot, who I got a chance to meet. He's a really interesting guy. He used to write for Newsweek for a really long time, but so many of them have been laid off in recent years. I'm sorry to say. Yeah, right, exactly. That's right. So it's it depends. Yeah, I know the New York Times. They're kind of like 40-inch plot summaries. It's a funny way of doing criticism, but they've always done it that way. They prefer that.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of papers now just take off the wire. I mean, they don't even have critics anymore.
That's true. And we run wire too. Yeah,
they just take stuff directly off the wire, and they don't even. I mean, the critics that used to be there are gone from a lot of places.
And that's and that comes up a lot too. Is local as having a local critic versus just picking up a wire. Does it matter? And if it's a local film, does it matter? And so that's an ongoing.
Yeah, but the New Yorker also does a really good job of film criticism.
But I do tend to read stuff that's also fun and entertaining too. I mean, because Entertainment Weekly, I have fun because they're sarcastic about a lot of stuff. I mean, they have fun with it rather than just take themselves overly serious. And so I get that all the time, and I read it. Maybe not every article or every review or anything like that, but I like Owen Gleiberman. I mean, I think he's a good reviewer, and he does a lot of really good stuff.
Any questions in the back there? Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, hi, thanks. I want to talk about the marketing. I had taken on freelance because I wanted to get experience on trying to find money for an indie film and also help add to an independent festival. I've never heard no so much in my life. And I was wondering what avenues or what focus did you, because I'm really using their target market, where their audience is, the kind of businesses that actually refer back to the target. And I'm just having a hard time really trying to get people to buy into it, into this and what it is. They've done Kickstarter, they've done all the social media, they've really self-promoted themselves. They've done some actual online magazine ads and interviews. But the local is just no. And the film festival also it's a for-profit. It's not a 501c3. So I didn't know if that played into it, because I've actually have raised money for local theaters here and had a tremendous turnout and got a lot of money. And now I the economy. I really don't know where to go at this point.
And you're talking the general Cleveland,
Right, the general
market.
Cleveland, right. And Akron, you know, some of the surroundings. So I didn't know what any of the filmmakers did, you know, outside of asking your family.
Well, I probably have the closest story you're looking for because I still make movies in Michigan, and you know it's a lot like Cleveland. So, believe it or not, these are the avenues we did to raise money. We started with Indiegogo, which is just like Kickstarter. I felt bad about begging for money, which is basically what it is. So we did a little bit there. And we did some fundraiser shows with bands. We'd have bands come out, and we had T-shirts made and stickers. And the movie's about a pyromaniac, so we made lighters that had the logo on it. It's plays today at 2:30, by the way. At the festival. So we would sell merchandise at these shows. This is the craziest one. In Michigan, you get 10 cents a can for empty bottles or cans. So I spent a whole week loading, going on Facebook, asking people for their empties.
No.
Just loading my car over and over, and raised over $900 that way to help with post-production. I mean, I'm like all about that. This is just my money and whoever else wants to help out to make these movies. So there's at no chance has anyone ever come up and be like, hey, I want to give you money to help you make your movie. Here's $10,000. I mean, that's just, I know that's probably not going to, especially in Michigan. So, I mean, creativity is just absurd ways to make money, like to make any money possible. I've never said, oh, I can't make the movie. I don't have as much money as I need. I've always just figured I'll just make it with whatever I have, and that's going to be the movie. I've never let money, inhibit the idea even, or this, it's like we're going to do it next month no matter what. Even if we have $30, we're going to do this somehow. So you have to have that mentality, or else you're just going to keep waiting and waiting and waiting.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to go with one more question, and then we'll leave the rest of the half-hour time to allow you to see and do some one-on-ones with the panelists, if that's all right with you guys. One last question, please.
This question is especially for Michael and Rosie and Clint. Can you talk a little bit about the role of synergy with universities and academia, who are often distributors in cities for independent film? I'm from Columbus, and so the Wexner Center for the Arts is where I see a lot of independent film. And especially for financing, for foundations, for grant awards, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I think the trajectory of life in the actual movie theater is changing so much. Right. Can you speculate a little bit about that?
It can be a really big part of it, as you already know. And here in town, we have the Cleveland Institute of Art Cinematheque. The Cleveland Museum of Art has a film series. And a lot of those films just exist in film series at universities and colleges and museums and art institutes and that sort of thing. And that's, that's a big side of it. That's you will only see some of those films in those venues. So it's part of the whole system.
Yeah, in Sundance we have a partnership with the UCLA Film and Television Archives, where we've been working with them for a long time and making sure there's at least one copy of every single film that's ever shown at Sundance in their archives. And we don't do as much outreach, per se, to working directly with film students in the area, but a lot of film students like at UCLA, Loyola, USC, Chapman, those are the four big universities in LA that have film programs. We've had people from Sundance, go speak to classes there or even teach a class. My old boss used to be the director of the festival, Jeff Gilmore, taught for years at UCLA. He was one of my professors, so there's that whole relationship. And then a lot of university students, they'll come volunteer at Sundance too. And that's across the board, like nationwide. Our rules for volunteering is 21 and over, but we get a lot of film students who are studying film and love film and just want to be up on a cold mountain for 10 days because they know they're going to be able to see films that might never get distribution.
I'm like seeing how to add to that. It's like, we do a lot of outreach through university. We are very fortunate that we actually have San Jose State, which is 2 blocks from the center of everything we do. I mean, literally, we have students, they make up a large chunk of our audience, and they are very rabid fans of cinema. They have film courses, they have all kinds of stuff, and all the professors are very highly involved in the festival too, that work in those. So I mean, we're doing a lot of promotions that way. Likewise, we have 3 other universities and our junior colleges right near us that we have a lot of people coming in from those. And so, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can add to what's already been said, except for, yeah, it is a very big part of it, because while we are still, you know, our average moviegoer is 35 and above at our festival, we still have an obligation to create that next wave of fans, to keep the business model going, because you know you can't just keep on going and not having a festival sell tickets. you have to find some way to keep it going, and so yeah, I mean we do a lot with that.
And the student side of it, just quickly to add to that, the Cleveland Festival has a lot of outreach to college students and discounts and special days, etc. Bill Gunsler was a student right here, communications major at Cleveland State, went to the International Film Festival here as a student, loved it, had a great time, thought, boy, I want to get involved with this, volunteered, was a volunteer, and today he's the artistic director of the Cleveland International Film Festival. So, you know, it has great, you know, connections and opportunities for students.
It's a great question, thank you. Thank you also to my panelists. Thank you for taking your time away from the festival. Taking your time, obviously, away from your bar attendance. Huge part of the creative process. I never knew that. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you to Kim Neuendorf for bringing the festival back onto the Cleveland State University campus. Thank you all.